The wind on Dust Devil Ranch was a living thing, a hot, abrasive spirit that tore across the scrubland and rasped at the soul. Cassian Thorne stood at the altar of the small, blistering chapel, the starched collar of his best shirt a noose around his throat. He watched the approaching dust devil, a slow, churning cloud that marked the arrival of the woman he was bound to. She was nothing like he'd imagined, not the lithe, graceful woman of his dreams, but a solid, plain-faced stranger in a simple brown dress. In his mind, she was merely the last card in a losing hand, the final, desperate gamble to save the land. This was his penance for his father, the Sinja Quiet. Burning resentment he kept banked deep inside. His father, Cyrus Thorne, sat in the front pew, his cold gaze fixed on Cassian. It was the same look he'd had when he lost the first ranch to a rigged game of cards. That memory was a wound that had never healed. As the wagon rumbled to a stop, the dust settled just enough for her to emerge. Seraphina Finch. Her hands were clasped at her waist, but her eyes, a dark, fathomless brown, met his without flinching. There was no shame, no nervousness, only a quiet, unwavering resolve that unnerved him. The preacher began his familiar sermon, but Cassian heard none of it. He was lost in the memory of his father Oz's broken promise, and this forced union was the only way to keep the rancher's pulse beating. When the time came for him to speak his vows, the words adieu came out flat, hollow. Then came her turn. Seraphina's voice rang clear and steady through the small, stifling chapel. Her gaze never left his, and when she declared her acceptance, her adieu was not a whisper of submission, but a shot fired in the dark. It was the sound of a declaration of war. The ride back to the ranch was a trial. The sun beat down on the wagon, but the air between them was colder than a grave. Finally he spoke. "Suppose you'll want to see the house." "I've already seen it." "Oh," Seraphina replied without looking at him. "3 times, actually, while you were in town drowning your sorrows." Oh, Cassian froze. His heart thumped a frantic rhythm against his ribs. How could she know? "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh," he grunted. "Of course you don't." "Oh," she said, and a hint of a smile touched the corners of her lips. "Just as you don't know that your foreman, Caleb Graves, has been skimming cattle to pay his own debts." Oh, Cassianos' world spun. "That is impossible. Calibay, he was been with us for years." Seraphina turned to him, her eyes holding a glint of steel. "Loyalty does not feed hungry mouths, Mr. Thorne. Desperate men do desperate things." She paused. "He has been pocketing 1/3 of every cattle sale. Your father knows, but he cannot afford to fire him." By the time they reached the ranch, Cassian saw everything with new eyes. The sagging fence posts, the thinning herd. The ranch was bleeding from 1,000 tiny cuts, and this marriage was a tourniquet, not a cure. "How do you know all this?" "Oh," he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Seraphina stepped down from the wagon with a grace that defied her size. "Because I've been preparing for this marriage longer than you have, Cassian. My father didn't just arrange this union for the water rights. He arranged it because your ranch is the key to controlling water access for 3 counties." She walked toward the front steps of the house, paused and turned to look at him. "The question is whether you're smart enough to listen, or too proud to lose everything while pretending you know better." Cassian watched her disappear inside. He knew nothing about her, and she knew everything about him. The realization felt heavier than the ring on his finger, heavier than the debt on the land deed. Cassian found her in the study, sitting behind his father's desk like she had been born to it. Papers were spread before her, like a battle plan, account books, deeds, and legal documents. What made his blood run cold was seeing Caleb Graves standing before the desk, hat in hand, a terrified schoolboy before the headmaster. "What's going on here?" Oh, Cassian demanded. "Show her your wife." Oh, Caleb stammered. "She knows about the cattle." "Of course I know," oh, Seraphina said, not looking up from the papers. "I know you've been selling 15 head a month and reporting only 10. I know you've been pocketing the difference. And I know you plan to blame it all on rustlers." Oh, Caleb's bravado returned. "Or you think you can just waltz in here and give orders? You're nobody, just some fat woman whose daddy paid to get rid of her." Seraphina rose slowly. "That's your first mistake, Mr. Graves. assuming my size reflects my strength. She pulled a small ledger from the desk drawer. Your second mistake was assuming I came here alone. The sound of boots on the front porch made everyone turn. Through the window, Cassian saw 3 men approaching, hard-faced and armed. "Warner, so they are my ranch hands," Serafina said, a wry smile on her face. "Hank, Cole, and Frank. They're here to make sure people keep their word." Oh, Caleb bolted for the door, but Hank stepped in his way, his size alone a physical barrier. The foreman, faced with 3 armed men and a woman who knew every detail of his thievery, crumbled. "The money's hidden in my cabin," Caleb stammered. "Most of it. I.e., I spent some on medicine for my youngest." "Oh," Serafina's expression softened. "The rest of it, then. We'll consider the medicine your severance pay." She nodded to Hank. "Give her escort him, and make sure he is gone by morning." After Caleb was led away, Cassian grabbed Serafina Rusher's arm. "Who are those men? Why are they here?" She pulled away, walking to the window. "And my father didn't just arrange this marriage for land, Cassian. He arranged it because your ranch sits on the most valuable water rights in 3 territories. But there are other people who want those rights. Dangerous people." "Oh? What kind of dangerous?" "The kind who would rather see you dead than see you succeed. A man named Silas Blackwood." She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "He made an offer for your ranch weeks ago. When your father refused, he made it clear that accidents happen to stubborn ranchers." "Oh," Cassiano's stomach dropped. "What are you saying, someone wants to kill us?" "Jan, I'm saying someone wants to kill anyone who controls this land. That is why my father moved so quickly, and that is why I brought protection." Before Cassian could respond, a gunshot echoed from the direction of the bunkhouse. Through the window, they saw Hank stumbling backward, clutching his shoulder, as Caleb McKinley mounted a horse with a rifle in his hand. Another shot shattered the study window, and bullets splintered the wooden walls. Cassian pulled Serafina down behind the heavy oak desk. "Stay down!" "Oh," he shouted, reaching for his gun belt. He looked out the broken window, and his blood ran cold. Caleb was not alone. At least 6 riders had appeared, all armed, all moving toward the house with deadly purpose. They spent the next hour pinned down, waiting for the gunfire to subside. When it finally did, a fragile quiet descended. The smell of smoke drifted through the broken windows. An orange light flickered against the walls. The front porch was on fire. "The root cellar," Cassian said. "There's a tunnel that leads to the barn." As they raced for the kitchen, the ceiling began to collapse behind them. But just as they reached the cellar door, Cassian heard his father's voice calling out from the yard. "Cassian, son, are you in there?" Osiris had returned, and from the tone of his voice, he seemed genuinely surprised. The root cellar tunnel was older than Cassian remembered. The wooden supports groaned ominously as they crawled through the narrow passage. Behind them, the sound of the burning house grew fainter. Ahead lay the unknown danger of whoever might be waiting at the barn. "Your father sounds genuinely surprised," Serafina whispered. "Then who warned Caleb?" Cassian asked. They emerged into the barn to find Hank sitting against a hay bale, his shoulder roughly bandaged. The other 2 men, Frank and Cole, were positioned at the barn doors, watching the burning house. "Mom, Hank said when he saw them. "That foreman of yours, he knew exactly where we'd be. Knew about the tunnel, too." Cassian felt the pieces click into place. "Serafina, who else knew your exact plan?" Her face went pale in the flickering firelight. "Only my father, and Day, his business partner. My own father, Elias Finch." The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Her father hadn't arranged this marriage to save them. He had arranged it to destroy them. Frank called out, "Riders coming, at least 10 of them." Through the barn door, Cassian could see torches approaching across the darkened ranch land. These weren't concerned neighbors. They rode in formation with military precision. Silas Blackwood. Serafina breathed. This was all planned. The marriage, the theft, the confrontation. It was all designed to flush us out so Blackwood could finish this. Cassian understood now. He had walked directly into a trap that had been months in the making. "The back entrance, Cassian said. It leads to the canyon. They sprinted from the barn, running through the darkness as the hooves of Silas' men thundered behind them. They scrambled down a narrow canyon, the walls slick and unforgiving. Serafina had a plan. The explosives! We can trigger them! They raced toward a specific rock face, but as Serafina reached the trigger box, the ground beneath them shifted. A massive boulder, dislodged by the vibrations of the horses, came crashing down. Serafina screamed, her foot pinned beneath it. "Go, Cassian!" "Oh," she yelled, her voice raw with pain. "Get to the sheriff!" Oh, he froze. He saw his father-in-law's face. The memory of fleeing the old ranch, leaving everything behind, flooded his mind. He couldn't. He wouldn't. "I didn't run then, and I won't run now," he roared. "We do this together." He grabbed the crowbar he had been carrying and with a primal cry began to pry the boulder away. The sound of hooves grew closer. He worked with a desperate fury, and just as he felt the rock shift, Silas's men rounded the bend. "Look what we have here." "Oh," Silas's voice sneered from above them. He was a tall man, impeccably dressed in a black suit, with cold eyes that reflected the firelight. A coward and his fat bride. How poetic. Just as Silas was about to give the order, Cassian pulled Serafina free. She reached into the trigger box and slammed down on the detonator. The ground rumbled. A massive explosion ripped through the air, sending rock and debris cascading into the canyon, blocking the path of Silas's men. "This ain't over!" Silas yelled from the other side. "You're wrong, Blackwood." "Oh," Serafina retorted, her face grim. It just began. The sound of the explosion drew the territorial marshals. They arrived on horseback. They found Cassian and Serafina, battered and bruised, but alive, sitting on the canyon floor. "We've been expecting you," Serafina said, a wry smile on her face. Later that night, with the culprits rounded up and the fire under control, Cassian and Serafina sat by a small campfire, wrapped in blankets. The tense, charged atmosphere of the day had been replaced by a quiet exhaustion. "You know," Cassian said, staring into the flames, "when I first saw you in that dress, I thought I was getting a bad deal." Serafina let out a small, genuine laugh. "I knew you were thinking that. I was pretty sure you thought my horse should have an easier load." Cassian shook his head. "I didn't see you at all. I was too busy looking at what I thought I was losing. All that land, all that pride. I nearly lost my life, and I found out which one was more valuable." Huh. Serafina smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. "I never thought I'd be able to trust a thorn, but you ran toward the fire, not away." The marshals took a statement from them both. Serafina presented the sealed government map, revealing the secret silver mine. The marshals, who had been investigating Silas's illegal activities for months, realized the true scale of his operation. The raid on the ranch was not just a land grab, it was an attempted cover-up of a national conspiracy. With Silas's network of bribed officials and hired guns exposed, the authorities had everything they needed. Silas Blackwood was taken into custody, his empire of deceit crumbling. He faced not just murder charges, but treason. The government, grateful for the revelation of the secret mine and the exposure of the corruption, granted Serafina and Cassian a significant stake in the new venture. It was an act of goodwill, a fair price for their integrity and bravery. 6 months later, Dust Devil Ranch was reborn. The house stood proud, rebuilt with sturdier timber. Cassian was no longer the proud, hot-headed cowboy. He was a thoughtful leader and a partner. He would often find Serafina, a ledger in her lap, watching the new rail line being built, the rail line that would bring wealth and prosperity to their land. Not from the silver mine itself, but from the legal, honest trade that would flow through their town. As they stood together on the porch, a man and his wife, a cowboy and a strategist, Cassian knew that what he had gained was worth more than 1,000 fortunes. He had found a partner he could trust, a future built not on pride or lies, but on a foundation of courage and love. He had found his home.